Hey everyone, I'm just gonna wait until he gives me the thumbs up, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to say hi before my talk starts and to thank everyone for coming on out to hear about Fancy Bear and TTPs and Miter Attack. We got Katie in the back. I love you. FSD, sorry. She's awesome. Okay, fangirling here. So as soon as I get the thumbs up, I'll start. So thank you again for coming out. Oh, and by the way, that hat on the bear, it took me over 2 hours just to get that stupid hat. To like find it, find the right hat, size it. I had to like do all this like color adjustments on it, and it was crazy. I was like, all for a hat, all for a hat. Yes, it is worth it. So, okay, all right, so I'm just gonna get started. I have 25 minutes to bring this home, so I wanna pack in as much information as I possibly can. I have Tom over here as my helper. He's my threat actor. Yuck, 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 yuck. So, and he has some special things that I made specifically for the audience. I ordered custom fortune cookies with a custom message in it, so be sure to get one before you leave, and he'll be handing them out throughout the presentation. So I get into the office early in the morning, right? And what do? I check my email and I see what the different threat sharing groups are doing. So I'm like reading through and there's like a ton of emails, right? And they're all talking about this one specific spear phishing campaign. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'll see if it's in my environment. So I get the domain, I do some hunting, you know, I do the Splunk thing and I do some searching, and I'm like, oh crap, like it looks like we got the same exact spear phishing campaign that the threat intel groups are talking about. So what do? I take a look at that particular domain. And just FYI, don't try this at home or at work, OPSEC, blah, 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 all of that. So I find out that the domain is from China, and I'm trying to figure out what the heck is going on. So of course, it's gotta be the Chinese attacking our company. It's China, right? So then I'm like, well, you know, I'll take a look at the domain, see what's going on with it, like what the heck are they trying to do or get my particular users to do. And I see here that it's just some random thing, doesn't look anything too fancy, but there are Chinese characters. So of course I'm like, it's China. China's definitely attacking us. But as any good CTI analyst knows, there are threat actor reports. And I wouldn't be doing a good job if I didn't at least look at those. So I do some Googling and I do some searching and I go to the vendors and I'm like, oh, Russians use spear phishing? What? So I look into the different TTPs associated with that, and it's like spear phishing, water hole attacks. Oh, and guess what? That's what we've got with the particular domain and campaign that was sent to us. So, you know, I changed my mind. I'm like, it's not China. China's not attacking us. It's Russia, Mother Russia. With love from Russia, they're sending us malicious evil badness. So, of course, what comes to mind when you think of Russia? I'll give you 2 guesses. It has to do with the title. It must be Fancy Bear, APT28. They're attacking our organization. It has to be them. It must be Fancy Bear, right? So then I look at the particular things that are associated with that particular threat actor that they're publicly available known to do. So do we have credential harvesting? Let's see. That doesn't look too much like credential harvesting to me. I don't know about you guys, but to me, I'm gonna say, nope. Is there a spoofed email login page? I don't know. That doesn't really look like a spoofed email login page, so I'm gonna say no. And we have a little visitor over here. We have Putin. He says, hey. So, am I a US political organization? Last I checked, I'm gonna say no. So, this makes me think, well, we don't have a lot of the things that are associated with APT 28, so maybe it's not Fancy Bear, maybe? So I looked at other bear-type threat actors, so it must be Venomous Bear. What about Venomous Bear, right? So we got spearphishing, that's a definite yes. Is there spoofed infrastructure? Well, I could say yes for that. Am I a government organization or a non-government organization? Yeah, I fall into pretty much any organization. So I'm gonna say yes. Russian holidays, I looked at the different campaigns and information associated with it, and guess what? Around Russian holidays, I saw no activity whatsoever. So I'm gonna say yes, there was no activity during Russian holidays. Russian normal business hours, was there activity? See, we have Putin there, he says hey. And yes, there was. So guess what? It's gotta be Russia, it's Russia. But then I'm like, well, that's a pretty far-fetched thing. I don't know if I want to go in front of my CISO and be like, Russia's attacking us. So what else can I look into, right? So I didn't take into consideration malware, so I'm going to look at that, right? We had a malware sample that did end up on a targeted user's endpoint. And after our DFIR team looked at it and did all their fancy DFIR stuff, we found out that it was Dark Comet. Dark Comet. So I'm going to reference threat actor reports again, just because there's a lot of really smart people out there that put out a lot of really great intelligence. So after some Googling and some searching and looking at vendor stuff, I'm like, oh, it must be APT 38, which is, drum roll, North Korea. And if you look in the back, we have a friend from North Korea visiting us just today for this talk. And they're totally not a nuclear threat. He's totally here, friendly, not trying to, do anything bad or evil. He's a good guy. So, am I a financial institution? Yes. Are there any attacks related to Apache Struts? Well, I started doing some searching and looking at the latest exploits and old exploits for Apache Struts, seeing what Apache Struts versions we had in our environment, double checking some random dude didn't decide to install some other random stuff that's related to Apache. And during the time of all this stuff, and nope, we have no attacks related to Apache Struts. So are there other signs of TTPs related to APT 38? No. So what do you do as a CTI analyst, right? You're like, crap, it's not APT 38. It's like the end of the world, right? But even though it's not probably APT 38, it could still be Korea. And mind you, APT 38 based upon the published, publicly available information, so they could have changed TTPs. We don't know. We still have no idea. It could be Korea. It could be United States. It could be a 16-year-old, in their basement. It could be pretty much anyone, anywhere, anytime, any place. So, where else is Dark Comet found? It's actually for free. You can get it for free if you want. Something called commodity malware. So back in 2008, a French professional, really fancy name that I can't say, there was over 70,000 downloads of Dark Comet, and you can get it for free. So basically, I could send Dark Comet to whomever I want. You could send Dark Comet. Anyone could send Dark Comet if they really wanted to. So as a CTI analyst, I do a lot and lots more research. Lots and lots. Dave would nod his head to this one. And as I go through it, I'm like, gosh, attribution is a continual process. It's something that you do over time and changes continually based upon the campaigns, information, stuff that's published. Like it's not static. You can't be like, oh, it must be Fancy Bear, right? But information changes all the time, and TTPs and just all of that. Like it's a process. It's not something that just happens overnight. But basically, despite all of this and despite all the things that threat actors can do, it boils down to one thing, and that's human operators, like Tom, our threat actor. So hey y'all, I am Zena, or Cheerio on the Twitters. I'm a CTI analyst for a Fortune 500 financial services company. I'm a doctorate student at Marymount University, and I have 6 GX certs, a bunch of other stuff. You can read my bio. And I'm not speaking on behalf of my employers. I have more than one, so not speaking on behalf of any of them. And this is illustrative. It does not mean to reflect the true tradecraft of attribution. It's very hard. I am not an attribution professional. This talk is basically why I don't do actual true attribution. And yeah, so basically entertainment, nod and smile, laugh, take pictures like a tourist, you know. Yeah, attribution's hard. I don't do it. Disclosure. So here's a brief list of stuff that I'm going to talk about in the next 15 minutes. Attribution is hard. It's not for the faint of heart. And I thought you'd like the picture because it says bourbon bitches. So. And just like FSD, I don't know if you're familiar with them, Fuzzy Snuggly Duck, it's a bunch of different professionals within the industry, CTI analysts. We all do CTI differently, and we all have different perspectives, and we all, you know, build each other up and help us become better professionals. There's no right way to do attribution. There's no right way to do CTI. I'm not telling you you have to do it this way. It's just ideas and information that I'm sharing, period. So what is attribution? What does it mean? So I'm going to read a definition for you guys. It's ascertaining responsibility for malicious cyber activity. And this is according to the Hoover Institution on War, Revolution, and Peace, and it's an American public policy think tank and research institution located at Stanford University in California. So basically it requires a lot of different tool sets, staffing. You need to have a diverse set of skills for the particular analyst that you have. You need to get priorities from the upper people, like what do they want you spending their time on? What are they responsible for? Management. I mean, there's so much involved with potentially tackling true attribution or just attribution in general. So no presentation would be complete without Ed Scotus. I love him. And this is when he gave away the pies. So Jason D. Jolly, PhD, he wrote a book called Attribution, State Responsibility, and the Duty to Prevent Malicious Cyber Attacks in International Law. So in that particular book, he breaks down attribution into 3 different sectors and then gives specific techniques under each particular segment. So the first one is technical attribution. The next one is forensic attribution, and the third one is indirect attribution, with an overarching multiple attribution frameworks. That means using multiple techniques under each particular division and coming up with attribution. So out of this really long book that's really long, I can basically sum it up in one sentence for you. No single technical attribution technique or scheme is able to adequately attribute a cyber attack standing alone, and it's very difficult and almost impossible to do in some cases. But let's say you're going to try to tackle it, right? here's some things that people in the technical side of things would look at. So I'm going to read this off. Keyboard usage, language used with the particular malware, like if it's Python or C+, or even assembly, the compiler used, compile time, libraries, metadata, resource language, time zone info, the build times, the C2 check-in times, mutex names, kernel pull tags, passwords, indicators, domain registration, IP ownership, code styles, PDNS, SSL certs, and more. It just goes on. So what's the difference between NATO and non-NATO countries? NATO has affirmed that international law applies in cyberspace. So what does that mean? Some allies, including Denmark, Estonia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and the United States, have sought to use public attribution of malicious cyber activity to change behavior. So what's in a naming structure? Just FYI, there's no standard reporting or naming structure, just like APT28 or Fancy Bear has been called many other different names. It's like I get a particular campaign, right? Or a vendor gets a particular campaign. Then a different company gets a different campaign. And everyone gets like a different view into the threat actors and what they're doing. Not everyone has like the complete, total, and whole picture. So of course, you know, if I name something like Orange Sunrise or Starving Kitten or God knows what, right? Like, you know, another organization like Bank of America, they'd be like, psh, girl, I'm not going to name this Starving Kitten. Who knows what the hell you did with your research? So that's kind of what plays into it, and not everyone has FireEye, not everyone has CrowdStrike, not everyone has all the different intel vendors that are out there. So of course they get access to different information. You can't expect them to all be talking about and reporting stuff that they don't even have or that's not even available or shared. So then resources, CTI analysts don't just pop out of milkshakes. Like, it actually takes some education and learning. There's, of course, the skills gap and skills shortage. So you have to make sure that you actually have the infrastructure within your own organization to support the difficult task of doing true attribution or attribution in general. And of course, no talk would be complete without a talk about tradecraft. So that's cultures, politics, language, regional customs, international trade agreements, current events around the world, just to name a few. I mean, tradecraft is huge, immense, like, and everyone does it differently, so. Another thing about attribution is that attackers can cover their tracks. So how do you decipher between an attacker from the United States using Russian malware versus a Russian from Russia using Russian malware? I can't. Maybe some of you guys can, but I definitely cannot. And then what we've seen is that actors are increasingly relying on living off the land techniques and commodity malware in order to disguise their true identity. And also too, attackers like to use other people's computers, not their own. So, you know, they're using other companies' infrastructure to launch these attacks. So you're like, oh, it's this small dental practice. And you're like, okay, maybe not. Bad idea. And then also too, threat actors tend to, it's like you think a threat actor, once they gain access, they're like, oh, it's all mine. No, like they tend to sell their access. So that's also something to consider. And in Cyber Mercenaries, the State, Hackers, and Power, Tim Maurer discusses the use of independent hackers to act as a proxy for nation-state actors. So I don't know about you guys, once again, but I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between an independent hacker acting as a proxy versus the actual source of the attacks. And then, of course, we have Olympic Destroyer, false flag operations. They could purposefully be deceitful regarding compile time, compile language, keyboard, like all that stuff, right? So why do we love attribution? In the news, we hear about China hackers, $57 billion per year in losses due to China stealing our shit. So, of course, we're like, oh my God, right? And then another one from the Washington Post, hacking keeps us up at night. And it's basically China hacking into companies, stealing our shit once again. There's another story from the NY Times on Chinese spies. Who doesn't love a spy story, right? You're like reading it like, oh yeah, China's got the NSA hacking tools and they're using them against companies. Oh my gosh, you know? So of course it's really interesting. And then the other thing that attribution plays to is the storytelling aspect of it. So I have a couple years of actual professional paid training on some of this stuff. And for instance, cortisol. Cortisol for your neurochemistry gets your attention, creates the tension, all of that. And then as the story progresses, you release dopamine, which encourages further engagement. And then finally, oxytocin helps to create and solidify that emotional connection with the story so that it's meaningful to you. So what does that mean? So it plays to archetypes, the hero's journey, you know, innocent company X, and strong, brave CTI analyst like me is trying to hunt down the threat actor, you know, and it's like, oh, will she find it? Oh, I don't know, you know, and the story just progresses. So of course that's more memorable. If I did the story at the beginning that I was like, yo, there was a spearphishing campaign and a drop dart comment, you'd be like, and? Like, that's boring, right? I don't remember that, whatever. So telling a whole story is a little bit more memorable. We also have traditional intelligence, so military officers, and the traditional intelligence community influencing cyber threat intelligence and attribution. But I don't know about you, I don't have any airstrikes that I can call in or cruise missiles. So, I mean, you might have it, but I don't. And then some of the good things, so true attribution, Robert M. Lee, he says, of the Forensics 578, we also have the other instructor in here, woo, I love you. Okay, he said, most technical folks shouldn't consider true attribution, and it's highly, highly abused and resource intensive with little value in the wider community today. So I use attribution. It's very helpful for some of the strategic threat intel folks where they kind of look ahead at the changing TTPs of some of the threat actors and try to proactively protect the company, right? And private organization versus government versus critical infrastructure. As a private organization, it's a little bit different than, let's say, gas or electricity, right? You might kind of want to know if China's trying to cut off all our electricity or even election tampering. That's the CFP entries for DerbyCon from 2018 to 2019. So what's useful? I use what's useful from attribution, and then I just don't use the rest that I don't have time for, resources, skills, all of it, access, data, blah. I do what I can with what I have. And something to think about, does your company legally pursue hackers? Or do you legally pursue fraudsters? If not, why do you need to know? So attribution can hurt. You can, there's of course hacking back. You could think that it's some bad hacker, I'm gonna get you, right? But it's really just an innocent homeowner that had their home Soho router compromised and they're launching attacks from it. Something else to consider is your CISO. Is your board interested in stories about threat actors, or are they interested in metrics and reports on your security posture concerning threat vectors? I'd probably say the latter. So I've narrowed it down to using TTPs instead of doing true attribution, because it's hard for most orgs and it's hard for me, period. What I do instead of true attribution, incident triage, lots and lots of reports, finding gaps within the security posture, POCs, exploits in the wild, and much, much more. And with cyber threat intel, you can be more customer-centric, finding out what the SOC needs, DFIR, Hunt, Red Team, the entire enterprise. Oh, look, Putin's back. Threat hunting, we can take those TTPs that we also map back to MITRE, because we have MITRE in the audience, and then kick that over to threat or the SOC, and help make sure that we're protected from those particular attack vectors, right? We also have adversary simulation. Pretend you're APT28. So close the loop between SOC, CTI, DFIR, and Red Team. Find control failures, detection gaps, find what works. WannaCry, I look for stuff that's going wrong in other countries and how they got hacked. Protect us ahead of time. Shadow brokers, anyone can have elite hacking tools. So y'all, anyone can be a threat actor. Takeaways? So for time, I'll just show you. Humans behind the keyboard. Attribution is hard. Threat actor reports are gold. Intel sharing is vital. Leave true attribution to the pros, i.e. not me. And attribution is a tradecraft. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming out. This is a little bit about me, blah, blah, blah. I have a website. Check it out. So carry the DerbyCon torch, as Dave and team says. A little bit of resources. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of DerbyCon. And thank our threat actor.